Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of RHEL Presents. I am Chris Short, host of Red Hat Live Streaming. I am joined by the one and only Eric Hendricks, aka Eric, the IT guy. Eric, how are you?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing fantastic, especially after our last episode. I think folks will be happy to know that I ripped out my server and I'm currently rebuilding it.
That is wonderful news.
We had some networking issues, and then funny enough, I was contacted after the episode was over, and come to find out that part of our problem was actually not my internet connection, but they were working on the certificates for the repository in the middle of our stream.
That's right. I remember seeing the emails like after the fact, and now the dots are connecting, and that makes total sense.
So we actually planned it that way because we wanted to demonstrate what it was like to be a systems administrator in real life. It never fails that you go to do something easy, some easy maintenance,
right,
and inevitably you have 30 days in a month, but that's when the software vendor decides to work on their stuff. It's at the exact same time as your outage window. So, just a little bit of real life on the show.
Yeah,
that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
There you go. So, after last week's debacle, you've decided to take a different route this week.
No demo, no terminal. But
no terminal, but plenty of nerdiness.
Yes, in fact, probably more nerdiness. In fact, this is the long-awaited day in the life episode. We've prompted this a couple of times on previous episodes, so I'm really excited to introduce a couple of amazing folks. In fact, I will let each of you introduce yourselves, and ladies first.
Okay, I'm Alexandra Fedorova. I work in Red Hat for 3 years now, and before that I was like Fedora ambassador, Fedora contributor, and now I'm also a member of Fedora Console. And my primary area of interest is building the infrastructure for RHEL development, building the workflows and the processes for continuous integration inside RHEL.
Awesome. Glad to have you on the show. In fact, I first got to know you a little bit through the Fedora podcast. There was an episode where you and the host chatted a little bit. I think it was about a new release of Fedora Server, in fact.
Yeah, we probably discussed that, and also the Fedora survey, which we planned. So we do some stuff in Fedora.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you on the show. And Simo, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
All right. I've been with Red Hat, I forgot, 14 years, something like that. And I started my career working around open source stuff. Samba was the project I was working on before joining Red Hat for many years since. And then my focus has always been more around security, identity, that kind of stuff. And currently, I ended up leading the RHEL crypto team, where we work on cryptography and all the libraries, around there, including certificates and certificate management. And so your server is my part.
Well, this is your fault.
So many
of course.
That's amazing. Well, I may or may not trash talk you during the show today. But I think I wasn't intending to go this direction, but I think I will ask that question. What is the culture like here at Red Hat? Because it seems to be that that's kind of the big thing people think about is not RHEL or security or a hybrid cloud platform, but we're known very much for our culture. So how does Red Hat shape up, and how does that compare to other environments you've been in? And then we'll kind of backtrack into that, how you got started and things that and one other quick thing, if you are watching us live, we've got the chat open. Please, by all means, throw your questions in there. Would love to get your all's questions, get your feedback, and I mean, they are here for you. This is your all's hour, so definitely preference goes to live questions that come in.
Yeah, if you got real questions, bring them in, or OpenShift for that matter.
So,
Simo, do you want to start with the culture thing? Yeah.
You want to hear the dinosaur first? Okay. So, wow, culture Red Hat. It's not easy to define, I would say, like everything, but it has changed over time, of course. I mean, we've been here quite a while, but not in the ways one might think. I mean, when I joined, we were already quite big, according to some other my colleagues, I mean, older, around, I think, just a little bit about 1,000 people, and now a lot more, right? Like tenfold or more. And even though that happened, there is an extremely interesting culture of communication and also initiative within Red Hat in general, I would say, although there are many differences because at this point Red Hat has so many, components and there's RHEL, which is what I'm used to. There's other parts. But in general, there's this real great thing about communication and technical knowledge to the highest level everywhere. Yeah, it's a really inclusive culture, I would say. At least that's my experience. Although I'm a little bit privileged there, I guess. But I really feel like there's a lot of understanding, a lot of sharing, within our walls. Even though it makes me laugh to say walls because I've. So one of the defining thing I would say is that most people at Red Hat works probably more with people outside of Red Hat than with people within Red Hat, at least in the development department. I spent so much time upstream, which is what we call, projects, whatever they are, mailing list, other stuff like that. IRC for the old people or whatever Slack or anything today, like most of my life was there. And then there was, the internal part where you kind of do the boring stuff to bring RHEL to people. But yeah, so there is this thing where you're not confined just within any wall for the most part. You really interact with a lot with the community in a development role. Maybe other roles are slightly different. But that's my take, I would say.
I would support your point on like not having walls, and this is what I think you recognize very fast in Red Hat, that like no one shields you from the outside world, and there's no such delegation like I'm doing this thing and someone else will do the talking for me. It's like, no, you're doing the coding, but you also have to do the talking, and you also have to do the explanation, and you have to do the interaction, because all of that is still on you, and you need to own it, and you need to own the topic in full. So you cannot hide from the community interaction. It's part of the you as a RHEL developer to interact with the community. But maybe I can also add some different aspect on this. Like because I joined Red Hat, I'm kind of newbie in Red Hat. You can consider this like only 3 years. So when I joined Red Hat, the thing I really realized very it was quite different from the companies I worked before is like this independence of a RHEL developer and this level of RHEL developer being deciding things around. And sometimes it's really cool and you really enjoy that. Sometimes it can be also hard because for example, when I work in continuous integration and try to like unify some of the processes, there's literally like no way I can come and say like, people, you now do all this thing this way because like management said so. It doesn't work and it never works. And it's just, you really need to work with people, convince each and every person to try this out and to get on board with this change and so on. So sometimes I'm really like, it can be hard, to make such changes, but it's also like a very precious thing in Red Hat, this
Mhm.
level of interaction and this level of feedback and with RHEL development.
Well, and I think to prove your point, you just have to answer one question. I mean, how many communication tools do we have here at Red Hat? And I think the answer is never enough, because I mean, I have an entire screen on my Mac just dedicated to just communication tools, just so I can keep touch with all the different teams.
I thought only I did that.
Yeah.
Good to know.
No, no, you're not alone.
Yeah,
But I
definitely.
did want to, before we move on to the next question, I did want to get, I did want to kind of pick at one other thing, because you came to Red Hat through your contributions with Fedora. So I'm kind of curious what it was like working elsewhere, contributing to Fedora, and then coming to Red Hat to continue your work with Fedora. What was that experience like?
I enjoyed it very much because I mean, you have a work for the salary and for the money, and you had Fedora for fun and for hanging out with people which are like-minded, and for doing things you really enjoy. And this helped me a lot during my career. I think I had a whole like 20 minutes of talking at some of the previous Fedora Nest conferences just about how Fedora helped me to get each of my jobs, which I had before Red Hat, and like it was 6 of them, and each of them did because I had this experience in Fedora, and the final one also because of that. The bad thing is, of course, that once I joined Red Hat, my hobby and my work really converged that much that I'm actually struggling to find some other hobby to get this, switching of context when I actually want to get some rest from the stuff I do. So it introduces some problems on that part, but yeah, it feels really amazing to be able to work on your hobby in this environment. Yeah.
So I can definitely relate to that, because before coming to Red Hat, I had started working on podcasts, which I'm not shy about plugging on the show. So this is like the required one plug for the pseudo show. But
one ping only.
Yeah, I have one ping only. But I kind of stumbled into content creation and podcasting before I came to Red Hat. So like you, I had a number of different jobs before I went from systems administrator to sales at Red Hat to now I'm in marketing. And so now all of those worlds have kind of collided. And so I'm working in the RHEL BU. I'm doing content creation. I'm hosting with Chris every other week. And so all of those things have kind of come together, and it's great because I'm getting paid to do something I love to do. But at the same time, it's like, okay, now my hobby, I've just spent 9 hours on my hobby. What do I do? So if it helps, I recently fell in love with Dungeons and Dragons about 2 years ago. So I mean, if you're looking for a hobby, that's a great one, especially if you're creative and you're looking for a different outlet to kind of stretch those creative muscles. I mean,
I'm actually doing the crochet now, so just something to completely get outside of the computer screen and just like do something with your hands. This is very different experience.
You might be onto something there. All my hobbies involve screens. All my work involves screens.
Yeah.
It took me only 12 years to find something else, maybe 13, I don't know. The fun was a lot. I started playing bass recently. I love that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, let's get back into music.
That's definitely an analog experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I quickly moved away from using a computer. Because when I started, I plugged into the computer and the audio was terrible.
Oh, no. So shifting gears a little bit, how did you both kind of get into the developer space or the engineering space, however you want to look at it? Did you just kind of stumble into it, or was it something that you'd wanted to do from very early on? Just kind of tell us about that journey a little bit.
Simo, you first again.
Okay. I wanted to be a pilot. Then I started wearing glasses, and I decided computers were my thing. I was maybe 12 or 13. So it kind of was early on, but back in my time, internet was not the thing, and so progress was whatever book you could find, whatever you could buy. And then at university, learned this thing called Linux, learned this thing called internet, and from there on, it was just impossible to do anything else. I started working on open source project, then I started creating mine. Uh, Actually, Red Hat allowed me to do a lot more than that even. When I started, I would contribute to the summer project, which was and still is absolutely great project to work on. But Red Hat allowed me to do full time my hobby, so I started even more projects there. The rest of history. But yeah, I've always been really passionate about computers since a very young age.
Cool.
Kind of aligns with my experience, but yeah. The glasses height, that's the only difference there. I'm too tall to be a pilot.
In my case, I was actually learning mathematics and I was doing my PhD in geometry and topology when I realized that mathematics is probably like it's a very lonely job to do, and I realized like I need some more interaction, and so I tried to find something less nerdy, so I switched to IT from mathematics. And for me it was like very important when I decided that I go outside of academia, that I still have this feeling of people doing something for fun and interest and not just for salary. And so open source community, Fedora community was a place where I felt like, okay, it's not mathematics, but it at least has this academic feeling about like being interested in doing something nice for the higher purpose and not just being corporate business oriented person. So yeah, I enjoyed it so much. And then I was really happy to find some career path, which led me to this place where I can do it actually as a job.
So that's interesting. You said you left mathematics because it's kind of a lonely career path, but development IT can be pretty lonely as well. Did was your experience different? Did you have the kind of interaction and collaboration that you were looking for? Or was that something you got here
I think
in Fedora and eventually Red Hat?
Yeah, I think this is where like the feeling might be different for people who are doing like deep development in one specific area. But I believe that in IT you still have, the possibility to talk more with people around. It's like it's not any person on the street who will understand what you're doing, but at least like not a single person, right? So in mathematics, you really do have like your scientific advisor and maybe two colleagues who understand what you're talking about, like in the whole country or the whole world. And also in mathematics, it's a bit too strict on how do you interact with people. And I mean, in IT, I can go to a conference and present a thing which I really don't know about. I mean, I want to state a question and I want to engage in the conversation and so on. And in mathematics, you kind of show your results only when they're done, and you don't have this nicer environment where you collaborate, where you share more openly. It may sound strange, but yeah, mathematics is kind of felt kind of closed for me, and open source is where you can really ask people for help and you do things together, and this changes things. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a definite culture difference there because I could see how mathematics would be closed, whereas open source kind of celebrates, especially with the onslaught of DevOps and agile methodologies and all this kind of things. That hey, here's my thing. It's not a 1.0 version, so it's half broken. But what do you think? It's kind of celebrated versus
Yes.
versus kind of shunned.
Well, we are never done, unlike mathematics.
Well, I'll have to take your word on that because after about pre-algebra, my understanding of math just kind of plummeted through the floor.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat where like the algebra class, the one class I needed to take to get a degree, like it took me 10 years to finally go ahead and do that.
In fact, it was great for higher
I-
mathematics. DeVry I graduated with a bachelor's from DeVry University, and what was great is that they had a higher level math class that was statistics for like it
Real
was
people?
statistics for technology or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And when I asked what the for technology meant, they said, "Yeah, we kind of dumbed it down from the general statistics class for all you nerdy people." I was like, "Oh, great! I think I got to be in that class." So I got to be in the nerdy math class. So
Good job. Gold star for you, Eric.
all right, so I'll pick on Simo since the questions have been getting deferred to you first. So other than kind of your day job, what projects are you working on? Or you mentioned upstream. So what projects, what communities are you heavily involved with?
I have to say that I'm less involved heavily in upstream communities these days than I was until a little while ago. I think getting busier and that with somewhat higher level of work. I'm not. I think I have one package still that I own, but it's I own it because there is no work to be done in there, and so that's easy. I still have a couple of projects of mine, very small things around nerdy stuff like GS API or some hosted crypto stuff. Very small things that don't take a lot of my time. I had to stop working on the big ones because I couldn't follow them well enough to be really useful anymore. So I kind of on the sidelines, I cheer up, I follow the mailing list, maybe once a week I go through a few of them, and sometimes a surprise someone with a comment like, "Hey, you said nothing for 6 months. How come you come here and say something?" But yeah, the extent to which I can scale is limited at this point. But I'm still having a ton of fun following up on the sidelines if you want. I still keep tabs on all the projects that we've contributed in the past, even though maybe I don't say anything. Just like to see what they're going and what happens. So that's it. Small things at this point. But I'm happy with that. I mean, the small things are, I think I can do meaningful contributions because they're small. So whenever I do a patch, it's like, hey, it's a lot for a project that gets 3 patches a month, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
it feels more meaningful, even though it's a small thing.
It's awesome.
How about you, Alexandra?
I guess right now I'm not doing as much as I wish I would. And I do have one package to maintain in Fedora. It's a game, actually. It's a mind test game. Several years ago I was like into this, blog building game and so on, but I stopped playing it because I realized that playing it like is the same as participating in open source. You just build wrong thing. I mean, you build from blocks and not from the code, but everything else is the same. So I kind of switched back to the real thing. I also played with Raspberry Pi, and I have a even library to switch a LED light on Raspberry Pi from Fedora, like turn on and off the GPIO pin, and it was some fun experience with even rebuilding the kernel to get some device tree stuff in it there. So yeah, not very many contributions, I guess, but some interest in some side projects. Yeah.
I mean, you go from building blocks to building bits, but they can both blow up your computer. So there's that.
Miners.
Yeah.
So what one of the things that I'm very passionate about is helping folks that are getting into the industry or are trying to pivot. Because I've been in IT for probably close to 15 years now, and I think maybe 15 years ago you could have been a full stack engineer. You could kind of maybe have gotten your hands in a little bit of everything. But I think today technology is just so vast. There's so many different things, and it's so complex that there's no way. I mean, I've spent a decade on RHEL, and now I work on the marketing team, and I look at our operating system, and it's just like, can we break this down a little bit? So thankfully we have pods within the marketing BU. So I have certain areas of interest that I focus on, but it's so vast. Anyway, not to jump on my soapbox. So what would you recommend new developers, new open source enthusiasts learn? What are kind of the things that you deal with, or that you want to get involved with, or that you think are coming up that will be important to the industry?
Alexander, you have to first next time.
Okay, my turn now. Okay, so what's important for the industry or important for RHEL? So if we're talking about work in distribution of kind of like RHEL distribution, then obviously like Fedora is the way. And once you get how the understanding how Fedora works, you get the RHEL experience. Not full RHEL experience. You still will get a bit of surprise how huge RHEL is, but you get the idea. But if we talk about industry, I think I would still suggest to learn the distribution side of things, because we have this controversy about like, will containers eat the world, or like, will distribution still survive through the future? But what I see is like containers, the management of containers actually reinvents many concepts which distributions have, and finding those familiar concepts in the container world, at least for me, it's like an interesting direction, and it's bringing a bit of an order in the chaotic world of the modern development, where no one understands where this piece of code comes from. So bringing this, connecting those pieces. But I guess on a more very generic term, I'd say the future is to learn how to use your strengths in that ever-changing IT world. So don't feel like, because you have the skill in this thing and you have no skill in that thing, then IT is like closed for you, or you're not a real IT person or something. The key is like to find strengths in your special skills and to find the application. And IT is so huge right now, so there's always an application. You just really need to think how to apply what you can do in the current IT landscape. IT is everything now, so you will find a way.
That's awesome. And I love how you didn't just list off a bunch of languages or tools. I like how you took that at a higher level.
Great, because I'm leading with you should learn Rust. No, I'm kidding. But that's something I'm actually studying recently because I find it very fascinating. I'm not, though, the kind of guy that goes behind, every single new thing. I would say that from my point of view, you should really, I go through, kind of a logical process maybe, but I think you should decide early on whether you are more of a high level kind of guy or low level kind of guy. because they're completely different thing. I tend to like the low level stuff, and I kind of don't understand high level very much. It's just beyond me because whenever I look at something, I need to go and imagine how it goes all the way down to the bits in the CPU, and high level it's just so removed that my mind blows. So I think that's the very first thing for someone that is looking to start. Like, what do you like to do from that point of view, high level, low level? Then you can go completely different directions from there. And my experience in low level stuff, all the way down to the kernel, looking at the code, exactly how it works. And in that case, I would just say, find a project that has, appeal to you, of course, because you're never going to learn anything if you don't like it. And just try to understand how it works. And I think that's how I started. Like, I was trying to understand how a piece of code worked for real. Partially was because I was trying to do something and it didn't work. And it was like, okay, I really need to figure out how this thing works. And then I kind of got lost in the rabbit hole. And I don't remember if I ever did the thing that I started. I was looking for. I think I really a completely different direction by the end of it. But that's the thing, do something that you like, and at least that's, when you start to understand how things work. And from there on, you'll find, the right path. There will be either a project that you get really passionate about, or just a technology without being, attached to any specific project, and you can, become very experienced with that. Or, in the end, each one has a different path, but I strongly believe that you need to do something that you like doing. Otherwise, it's harder. At least for me, it's harder if I don't really like something. There's nothing wrong with just doing a job for the money. I also think that's perfectly fine. But in that case, your focus will probably be slightly different. One be in the technology itself, it will be something else. And so that's most probably something you should decide earlier, whether you like, or you love, coding, for coding's sake, or if for you it's just a stepping stone to something else. Some people are very excellent at, dealing with the management of the project or the product. I know people that are really amazing in that area, and I'm glad they exist and they help there. Just figure it out. But I think if you look at some specific tech and you start, looking deeply into them, you'll figure out what you like early enough.
That's really amazing. So one thing that you both mentioned was the ability to kind of pivot. And I cannot stress how important that is, because being here live streaming with Chris, talking about Red Hat, talking about RHEL, is kind of the epitome of a career shift.
Yeah.
Because I spent years as a systems administrator, and I spent years trying to be the deep, low level, not career wise, but technology wise, being deep in the code, understanding every piece of the operating system and network. And that's not me. Where the high level stuff kind of makes your eyes glaze over. That's where I live. Is I like to see the high level picture. It took me probably about 8 years of my career. So, I was close to 30. If you think about college and 8 years in the career field before I realized I'm a generalist. And you know what? That's okay. It's not a problem. It's actually a strength. And so it took me a few years to pivot from systems administration, systems engineering to sales, and now to marketing. And I feel like I've finally come home. So take it from me and my years of experience in the field. You have to pivot and you have to follow what excites you, because otherwise you're dealing with stress, you're dealing with burnout. And if you don't like what you do, I'm sorry, I'm not financially driven. So if I hate what I'm doing, there is no amount of money that's going to make that better.
I can relate to that.
I sometimes meet people who come and say, oh, what do I need to do to become a sysadmin? And I'm like, sysadmin is a profession, the term which we use maybe for next 3 years or 5 years. Do you really want to bet right now that like this profession, this job will survive for next 50, 60 years and you want to plan just one direction? You probably want to try it and like get some experience, but it's not who you are, right? You are yourself. You can work as a system administrator. You're not limited to this work. You can like explore new areas, different approaches. You can invent your own role, and you will find a place for this.
Yeah, the career field is definitely not limited. In fact, I think it might have been one of my college math teachers that told me that I'm not going to do well in technology because my math skills just weren't big enough. I mean, I'll let the results speak for themselves, but
Well,
and
at least you had a math teacher that told you that. I did not.
No, they were probably right about becoming a developer because I took a VB basic class and then a C# class and was just like, nope. And then literally looked across the hall and there was a networking lab. I was like, what classes do I have to sign up for to go play over there? And they're like, oh yeah, we've got this degree field about I see sorry, chat distracted me. It's like, oh yeah, we've got this degree path called network communications management, and you deal with servers and you deal with switches and you get to plug in cables and you get to build stuff. I was like, sign me up for that. So Christian, why don't you expand on that a little bit? You say you don't see a lot of love for systems administrators.
Oh,
So,
I knew
I mean,
this was the trigger some reaction.
Well, that's good because I think I know where Christian's coming from, and I'd love for all of us to address that.
I mean, I am a solutions architect now, but deep inside, I still think like a sysadmin. Yeah, I think we all do to an extent, right? Like, I flip that switch on and off now, though, where, before it was all I did, right? Like, was just sysadmin. Now it's like, all right, I got to sysadmin this thing. I've got to marketing that thing. I've got to open source this thing. Got to document that. Like all these skills have built up over time to where it's like, I can think like different people. And sometimes that sysadmin thinking is great. Sometimes it doesn't work too. So you got
like with my wife.
Right. Like my spouse has no idea what the hell I do, like technically, but she knows that there's lights and there's a camera involved and that kind of thing. Right. Like, but what she doesn't realize is that, there's things happening, right? We're working on things on a server downstairs, or we're, on a lab, and there's technical pieces to all of our jobs, but there's also non-technical pieces to all of our jobs as well, and that requires that human knowledge, where humans don't act like computers, and you have to think, with a different hat on, essentially. Yeah. Like I tell people, I wear many hats at Red Hat.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's a lack of love for systems administrators. It's. I used to be one. I spent a lot of years as a sysadmin, and there's a lot of parts of that type of role that I enjoyed. But in the end, it wasn't what I was driven to do. This is more my thing. And in fact, the systems administration work that I do nowadays is amazing. I get to basically write a lab. This is how you would do a thing. If you're like, we did convert to RHEL, we did in place upgrades. I wrote pretty much all the commands based on documentation, on other people's experiences, on this is the easiest way to do this thing. We want to convert from RHEL 7 to RHEL 8. This is the easiest way to do it. Does this fix all of your problems? Does this take care of every use case? No, but this covers 80%, and that's where I shine. And what was great was we did the demo. It sort of worked. It worked on my machine when we were off air.
Minor detail.
But minor detail. But then I got to move on, and I got to start prepping for the next show. So it's not that sysadmin is a bad title, and I do agree that in the industry, sysadmins have gotten a bad rap, and I don't think
Yeah.
that's deserved at all.
It's a market dynamic I don't understand. And I think sysadmins have become somewhat defensive.
also
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I actually worked as a sysadmin too, so don't feel like I'm like attacking the profession. What I meant more of the term itself. It has some weight of some burden of a stereotype attached to it at this moment. So I feel like it's not the work itself, but it's some impression it created, and it pulls it down sometimes, and this is why it's evolving. So it's not disappearing definitely. It's just it gets renamed, it gets introduced in some different way, and so on. I wouldn't say that we should get rid of sysadmins. No, that's definitely no. It's a valid work, but it gets some evolution to get away from that stereotypical sysadmin who is not interested in anything and just doesn't actually do anything and just waits for his system to work. It's not the good kind of sysadmin, and we're getting evolving over it into some areas where you actually have interest in some development of your systems and some evolution of your products and so on. So yeah, the evolution happens. So you don't my point was don't attach yourself to one specific title. If title evolves, you can evolve too. You can choose different areas, and you can find more interesting things as maybe around you. Yeah, don't close your eyes on that.
Fun fact, I also started as sysadmin profession. I was doing stuff on Tur 64 for people that still know what that is. But today I would call myself a site reliability engineer, and then I'm not a sub anymore, right?
Well, and I think that's a perfect example, because if you trace the history of sysadmins back far enough, you end up with electrical engineers.
True.
And so, I mean, I couldn't wire a circuit. I couldn't work on a circuit board. I don't know how any of that stuff works.
I don't want to do that anymore.
That's not part of my job. And I know that if I plug this thing into this box and push this button, that if everything's working correctly, then lights come on and disks spin up and that kind of thing. So I don't have to do the electrical engineering part, but that's not something we think about as a sysadmin. And to Simo's point, in a decade from now, the term may fall out of regular use, and it could be site reliability engineer, it could be DevOps engineer, it could be cloud architect. In fact,
engineer,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I mean, all four of us were sysadmins at one point. The term is
someone has to care for those computers, right?
Right. So
doesn't matter what you call it.
So Christian says that the term is considered the low-level entry job. My suggestions is that it should be changed to something else, because today sysadmin are more like sysops and not just admins. That's a great point.
What is sysops?
Right. Yeah. That's so. And I've seen different cultures, different companies address this different ways. There's sysadmin, systems engineer, systems architect, kind of in a tiered position. I've seen companies break it out to where you're sysadmin 3, then you get promoted to sysadmin 2, sysadmin 1. Yeah. So it means something different to different folks. Sorry to pick on you, Christian, but
no, we're not.
I think you've raised a very valid point.
I think you do too, because the last quote sysadmin I hired was actually a junior role. We needed a junior sysadmin, right? That we could teach and kind of mold, take your deep Linux knowledge, apply that, but also now we're going to add on to that. And we were a quote DevOps team. So, we had a need for a junior. We had a need for a lot of seniors, but there's plenty of gray in between here and there, that has to get filled in as well. And I think, whether it's a low-level term or not, they're still the same thing, right? Like to an extent, an SRE is a sysadmin. To an extent, a DevOps engineer is a sysadmin. They just might know a little bit more about networking or something to that effect.
Let's see, Chris, did you? I feel like I've kind of dominated the conversation.
Oh, no,
do you
you're
have
fine.
any questions for our guests?
I guess, like, what is the thing that drives you to get up and work on RHEL every morning? Right, like you roll out of bed, you fall on the floor. I mean, what's that experience like? Tell me. You know?
It's got to be all the video conferences, all the meetings. I bet that's what drives them.
Yeah.
Mhm. I think we can all share the equal hatred of meetings. Yes.
For me, it's actually really, really interesting to see a very huge infrastructure, very huge company, and to find, the logic inside this whole mess, and if you look from a bit afar, you're like, this is complete chaos. You cannot understand it, and then you start to dig in, and you start to find, connections and logic, and this is why it happened. This is what brings it, and then you start to untangle things, and this untangling things is really my passion. I like to understand it and to explain to others what I understood. This is the thing which I really enjoy explaining to people what I understood. People sometimes hate me for that, but but I do that all the time, and I really like that, yeah, that part of the job.
Nice.
Feels like Alexandra's into debugging the organization. I'm more on the programming part of it, I guess. It's I'm as a team lead and product owner, I have to interact with a lot of people on the team. I like helping out, more junior people maybe figuring out what's the next thing, how to do things. But also there's a lot of part of my job is connection with other people within the organization, within RHEL, or maybe sometimes also outside of RHEL. So there is a lot of it is basically enabling other people to do their job, I would say at this point. That's my probably major contribution, and that's what I kind of like doing at this time in my career. Uh, Sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes it's satisfying because you can see the fruits of all the organizational work you try to do, just like everything. So it's more of the programming of the work side.
So while you're making connections and kind of engaging different resources, and while Alexandra's kind of untangling the mess of code for this project or that project, it's I get the pleasure of going out, learning what you all are doing, looking at the upcoming features, and then figuring out. Then to Christian's point, I get to put on my sysadmin hat and go, oh, this would be great because I remember this time where I had this problem.
Yes.
So now this feature could have fixed this problem with like 3 commands or a system role or something. And then it's now my job. It's now my pleasure to then go out and tell our sales folks, tell the community, tell the audience of the show, hey, this feature is coming. It'll help you fix problems like this. So that's where I really activate. That's where I get excited. So let's kind of bring that process to the forefront. Is there something cool coming out with RHEL? Is there something cool you guys are working on that you'd love to share with folks?
CMO, I'll pick on you.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. So I guess it depends. What do you think it's cool?
Well, don't violate any state secrets.
No. I'm
know.
not. It's all I'm gonna say is public, and if it's not, it will be. So
my phone will be ringing in 2 minutes.
yeah. So I think in my side, it's really kind of niche, like cryptography, that kind of stuff. It's also very obscure from time to time. If you look at the stable RHEL like RHEL 8. We did work on a few system roles that you mentioned very recently that are coming out in, something came out in 8.4 already, and some will come out in 8.5. That was interesting stuff. I kind of like Ansible because it allows you to do so many things with a somewhat easier way and more, organic approach. So I think that's nice stuff. But the stuff I'm looking forward is around 9. We are bringing OpenSL 3 there, and it might not sound exciting, but it was a crap ton of work.
Yeah,
like, that's the technical definition.
Yeah.
It required extraordinary efforts in coordination. And fun fact, it's one of the rare cases where we had to work on RHEL before Fedora. And the only reason is that RHEL is smaller than Fedora, less packages. Like it's in that sense, it has less packages, and that means less dependencies on OpenSL. So there are thousands, literally thousands of packages that some way pulling OpenSL. But thousands is better than 10,000, and so it was easier to do it that way. Also, because we knew the process was going to take, it took us basically a year and a half since we started, and maybe 2 years since the first time we started, really thinking about it. And in Fedora time, that's like 4 releases, 3 releases, and it would have been really, really disruptive. And although, yes, you can throw bad stuff in your hive from time to time, you don't want to break the stable releases. So it was a very interesting experience. I didn't do most of it, of course. Other people in my team did it, but it is organizationally and the sheer amount of work to bring that thing into the composes, into the build routes, and fixing all the dependencies and explaining or helping people out. That was a great experience. I think it will be a very interesting when RHEL 9 comes out with that. So I think that's exciting for me. I don't know how exciting for other people because.
Well, I mean, to give you an idea of the scale at which you were working with, I just pulled from the blog post the SSL3 release post. 3 years of development work, 17 alpha releases, 2 beta releases, 7,500 commits from over 350 different authors. That's a lot of work, and doing any amount of that was not trivial.
Right.
No, it was really a huge thing, especially because it's not a normal release in the sense that it's not just an incremental.
Look at it. Yeah.
There was a change in the architecture of OpenSSL, the internal architecture that has repercussions. Not so much, luckily, to more modern applications, but there were changes to be made. Approachable. It's not like something that you have to rewrite all your support. It's not a different library, but when you talk integration at the level of the distribution, if you change a single function, you're going to break a dozen or more packages by just by a change in semantics, let alone a change in the signature of the function or anything like that. So it is challenging. It was a challenge, and it was really satisfying to go through it and see that we made it through. At this point, there's nothing secret. If you look at CentOS string, you'll find it there. You'll find all the packages we have there built against it. So it works, at least we hope and think it works. But yeah, it was a really pleasing, and I think will be a nice thing technically for mine. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's really cool. And don't discount the work you're doing, because I mean, just this morning, I think I had 2 or 3 articles hit my RSS reader about more crypto attacks and more ransomware. I mean, it's out
rampant.
there.
Yeah.
And the work that's getting done with OpenSSL, everything around secure supply chain, network bound disk encryption. I mean, I could list off 6 different things that are top of mind right now for not just Red Hat, but our upstream projects, for the government, for people worldwide. I mean, it's no small task. And I mean, yeah, 3 years and 7,500 commits. That's
a lot.
That's a lot. All right, Alexandra, your turn. What are you excited about?
I was involved in RHEL 9 bootstrap activities, so I kind of very excited that RHEL 9 is heading to release, and I'm kind of not shy to put my label on this RHEL 9 release. This is what I've done. Of course, it's like a work of entire RHEL engineering, but it's nice to see the release coming and prepared and being released. And while we were trying to package this initial amount of Fedora content into RHEL 9. And of course, during this time, we created the CentOS Stream 9, and I'm absolutely excited that RHEL development is now happening in public, and that public can see, can participate. And one of the future coming features is that public can actually vet changes in CentOS Stream via third-party testing. So, for example, even downstream rebuilds like Alma or like anyone can basically implement certain test suites and test CentOS Stream changes, and this will be included in the consideration. So, extending this community contribution collaboration with the community, this is what I'm totally excited about.
That's really great. Yeah, and I'm really excited by what you're saying, because I've been neck deep in RHEL 8.5 and 9.0 beta activities the last few weeks. So getting ready for the big announcements coming up in November. So I'm really excited, and it'll be great to see the new development lifecycle from Fedora to CentOS Stream to RHEL 9 in place, because like you said, more people can get involved and bring kind of the resources of Fedora, CentOS, and RHEL together to just make an even more secure and performant operating system. So there's so many cool things going. We'll have to have you both on to talk about that kind of post-release, because RHEL 9's going to be great. There's some great stuff coming. In fact, if you would like, putting my host hat back on, if you'd like, you can go to redhat.com/try-RHEL, try RHEL, and you can download copies of RHEL. And I believe that also includes beta entitlements now. So if you go and try out RHEL, you can try out not only the current release, but also the releases to come. Before we wrap up, is there any place either of you would like to send folks?
I would say go and try this 9 stream.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep, CentOS 9 Stream and Fedora, of course. We welcome everyone in Fedora.
I got a couple of Fedora servers here, and my workstation runs Fedora 34. So, although a couple of my more crazy friends are already running the release candidate for 35. It's like, yeah, I'm glad that you can do that, but I do live streaming and podcasting, and I need
some degree of reliability.
Yeah, and this next time, I've told myself I'm going to wait 48 hours before I upgrade, just to be safe. I'm usually like the day of, like 11 a.m.
I'll do a day of still.
I'm also all in Fedora 34, and I think in the last few years was like so good. Their beta experience is just painless. I remember the time where I had to do stuff, and I'd like to do stuff whenever an upgrade happened, like going over, the machine doesn't boot. That's RPM-E, some package that breaks everything.
Yeah. I mean, my workstation, in fact, I think started on 30, maybe 31, but I've done in-place upgrades all the way up to 34. And the only thing I ran into issues with this last time, go figure, audio, I had to uninstall the audio stack and reinstall it. Just something about the switch, some of the changes around Pipewire, and having been around for my individual instance being around for a while. I think I ran into some kind of an issue, but just did a yum reinstall on a few of the packages, and no problems. works like a champ, and that's in place upgrades. So that's great news for Fedora, and all that stuff works its way down into RHEL. In fact, our in place upgrade show a few weeks ago, notwithstanding.
I'm pretty sure my Fedora goes back to at least 18, if not before then, the specific. Not this machine, my other, like my personal machine, of course. The work machine gets refreshed every 3 years. So
I know somebody who had a long time system that they'd had going since like the early Fedora 20s. And they were so proud that they've kept it going that long that they end up virtualizing it, throwing it on their home lab server just so they can continue to do in-place upgrades on it, even though the hardware is long since retired. So
my hardware changed at least 3 times already. And just
yeah, same here.
And just image to the new SSD or whatever it is, and it keeps living.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you both so very much. I know it's crazy time of the year to have you guys on, but I really appreciate you giving an hour of your time to come and chat with us all and share your experiences. This has been a great conversation.
Agreed.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, definitely head on out to red.ht/free_RHEL to give RHEL a try and to see what our folks have been working on. And other than that, Chris, I will see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Another Thursday episode, and then we'll be back on our Wednesday schedule.
Sounds good. Next up, GitOps Guide to the Galaxy, folks. Join us in a few seconds.